There was a window in the old house on Briar Lane that faced the moon. Not the street, not the garden, not the church tower or the row of small houses with their warm yellow windows. It faced east, toward the low hills beyond town, where the moon rose slowly on clear nights and filled the room with a silver kind of quiet. The house belonged to a woman named Eleanor Vale. People in the town of Bellwether knew her, but not well. They knew she lived alone. They knew she wore soft gray sweaters even in spring. They knew she walked to the bakery every Tuesday morning and bought one small loaf of bread, 2 cinnamon rolls, and a paper bag of sugar cookies she claimed were for visitors. But no one ever saw visitors go in. They knew her garden was neat, her curtains were pale blue, and her mailbox was painted the same deep green as the front door. They knew she always thanked people politely. They knew she smiled, but only a little. And they knew that every night, when the rest of Briar Lane grew dark, one upstairs window in Eleanor's house remained open to the moon. It glowed softly behind the thin curtains. Sometimes it stayed lit until midnight. Sometimes until 2 in the morning. Sometimes, on nights when clouds moved across the sky and the moon appeared and disappeared like a thought someone was trying not to have, the light in that room stayed on until dawn. No one knew why. In small towns, people notice things before they understand them. They noticed the window. They noticed the light. They noticed Eleanor standing there sometimes, one hand resting against the glass, her face turned upward as if she were listening to something far away. And because people did not know her story, they gave her silence a shape of their own. Some said she had been a schoolteacher who never married. Some said she once lived in Paris and returned after a great disappointment. Some said she was waiting for a son who had gone overseas and never came back. Others said she was simply lonely. But loneliness is a word people use too quickly. It can mean a room without voices. It can mean a table set for one. It can mean a memory that keeps arriving before sleep. It can also mean loving something so deeply that even after it is gone, the heart keeps making space for it. Eleanor Vale did not mind the rumors. She had lived long enough to know that people often talk around what they cannot ask directly. So she kept her routine. Every morning, she opened the kitchen window to let in the smell of wet grass and chimney smoke. Every Tuesday, she bought bread and cookies. Every Thursday, she wrote letters she never mailed. Every evening, after supper, she climbed the narrow staircase to the room at the front of the house. The room with the window that faced the moon. It was not a fancy room. There was an old wooden desk, a small lamp with a cream-colored shade, a blue armchair worn thin at the arms, and a shelf of books whose pages had softened from years of being opened. On the wall hung a faded painting of a sailboat under a night sky. On the desk sat a silver watch that no longer worked. Beside the watch was a framed photograph of a man in a dark coat, smiling as if someone had just said something funny. His name had been Thomas. But Bellwether did not know that. At least, most of Bellwether did not. One person was beginning to wonder. His name was Noah Finch. Noah was 13, though he often felt either much older or much younger, depending on the day. He lived across the lane from Eleanor with his mother, Claire, who worked long hours at the clinic, and his little sister, May, who asked questions from morning until night. Their father had left 2 years earlier. Not in a dramatic way. There had been no shouting in the street, no broken glass, no door slammed hard enough for neighbors to hear. Just a slow fading. A suitcase. A promise to call. Then fewer calls. Then postcards. Then silence. Noah did not like talking about it. When people asked if he missed his father, he shrugged. When teachers asked if everything was all right at home, he said yes. When his mother looked at him with tired eyes and asked if he wanted to talk, he said he was fine. Fine is a useful word when you are young and do not know what other word to use. But at night, when the house was quiet, Noah often stood at his own bedroom window and looked across Briar Lane at Eleanor's house. He would see the upstairs light. He would see the pale curtains. And sometimes, if the moon was bright enough, he would see Eleanor sitting in the blue armchair looking out. Not moving. Not reading. Not watching television. Just looking. At first, Noah thought it was strange. Then comforting. Then, without meaning to, he began to depend on it. On nights when his mother came home late and the house felt too quiet, the light across the street made the world seem less empty. On nights when his little sister slept with one hand curled around her stuffed rabbit, and the hallway smelled faintly of laundry soap, Noah would look out and see the glow of that moon-facing window. It was like a lighthouse. Not for ships. For people who did not want to admit they were lost. One October night, after a rainstorm had washed the streets clean and left silver puddles along the curb, Noah saw something different. The window was open. Not just the curtains. The window itself. The night air moved the blue curtains gently, and moonlight spilled into the room like water. Eleanor was standing at the window with both hands on the frame. Then she lifted one hand. For 1 second, Noah thought she was waving at him. His heart jumped. He raised his hand halfway. But then he realized she was not looking at him. She was looking at the moon. And her hand remained lifted, still and delicate, as if she were saying hello to someone only she could see. Noah lowered his hand. He should have turned away. It felt private. But he could not stop watching. After a while, Eleanor whispered something. The distance was too great for Noah to hear. But he saw the shape of her mouth. 2 words. Maybe a name. Maybe a prayer. Maybe good night. Then she closed the window, drew the curtains, and the light went out. For the first time, Noah wondered if the window did not face the moon by accident. Maybe it had been chosen. Maybe someone had loved that view. Maybe Eleanor was not simply looking at the sky. Maybe she was remembering someone. And sometimes, a question enters a person quietly and stays. That was how it began. With a boy who could not sleep, an old woman who spoke to the moon, and a window that seemed to hold more than light. The next morning, Bellwether woke under a pale blue sky. The rain had left drops on every fence, every leaf, every parked car. The sidewalks shone. The church bell rang 8 times. Somewhere down the road, Mr. Alder's rooster crowed late, as if it had forgotten its one important job. Noah walked his sister to school, as he did on mornings when his mother had the early shift. May skipped beside him, stepping only on the dry parts of the pavement. "Why does rain smell like worms?" she asked. "It doesn't." "It does. Maybe worms have perfume." "Worms don't wear perfume." "How do you know?" Noah did not answer. He had learned that some of May's questions were not meant to be answered. They were meant to keep the world interesting. As they passed Eleanor's house, May stopped. "Why is that lady always buying cookies?" Noah looked at her. "What lady?" May pointed with her chin. "The moon window lady." Noah frowned. "Don't call her that." "Why not?" "Because it's weird." May looked offended. "Windows can face the moon, that's not weird." Before Noah could respond, the green front door opened. Eleanor stepped outside carrying a small basket. She wore a gray sweater, a long skirt, and a scarf the color of dried lavender. May immediately waved. "Good morning." Noah wanted to disappear. Eleanor paused at the gate. Then she smiled. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was softer than Noah expected, not weak, just quiet like a page turning. May pointed at the basket. Are those cookies? May, Noah whispered sharply. Eleanor looked down at the basket. A few. For visitors. Noah closed his eyes. But Eleanor only smiled again. Sometimes, she said. May tilted her head. Do you have visitors? Not today. Then why cookies? Eleanor looked at Noah for a moment, as if deciding whether the answer could be trusted with children. Because some things are worth preparing for, she said. May considered this. Like snow. Yes, Eleanor said, and kindness. May seemed satisfied. Noah, however, found the answer unsettling. Kindness. Prepared for like weather. That afternoon, after school, Noah found a small paper bag hanging from the handle of his front door. Inside were 4 sugar cookies, wrapped in wax paper. There was no note. May squealed when she saw them. The moon window lady. Her name is Mrs. Vale, Noah said. How do you know? He did not know how to answer. He only knew that after that morning, calling her anything else felt wrong. Their mother came home late that evening, exhausted but smiling when May ran to her with a cookie in each hand. Where did those come from? Mrs. Vale, Noah said. Claire paused. Eleanor Vale. You know her. A little, everyone knows her a little. What does that mean? Claire leaned against the counter and rubbed her forehead. It means she has lived here for a long time, but she keeps mostly to herself. Your grandmother knew her better than I did. Noah waited. His mother took a cookie, broke it in half, and handed one piece back to May. She lost someone, Claire said finally. Noah looked toward the window. The sky was already darkening. Who? Her husband, I think, a long time ago, before you were born. Was his name Thomas? Claire looked at him with surprise. How do you know that? Noah shrugged. I saw a photo, I think I did, through the window. His mother studied him carefully. Noah. I wasn't spying. Looking into someone's windows isn't respectful. I know it was just, the light was on. Claire's expression softened. She knew something about lights left on in dark places. Just be kind, she said, and give people privacy. Sometimes those two things have to live together. That night, Noah tried not to look. He did his homework. He helped May brush her teeth. He washed a cup and left it upside down on the drying rack. He sat on his bed with a book open in his lap. But the question kept returning. Why did Eleanor sit by that window every night? Why did she lift her hand to the moon? Why did cookies matter if no one came? At 10:04, Noah gave up and looked out. The window was lit. Eleanor sat in the blue armchair, the curtains open, moonlight spread across the floor. This time, she held something in her hands. A small box. She opened it slowly. Noah could not see what was inside. He looked away, remembering what his mother had said. Privacy. Kindness. Both. For the next few weeks, small connections began to form between the house across the lane and Noah's family. No dramatic friendship. No long conversations. Just small things. A bag of cookies left on the porch. May drawing a picture of the moon and slipping it into Eleanor's mailbox. Eleanor returning the drawing with a small note that said, "The moon looks very pleased." Claire carrying a basket of laundry inside during a sudden shower and finding Eleanor already bringing the children's shoes in from the porch so they would not get wet. Noah helping Eleanor one Saturday afternoon when the latch on her gate stuck. It does this in damp weather, she said. The screw is loose, Noah replied. Aren't we all eventually? He looked at her, unsure whether she had made a joke. Then he saw the corner of her mouth lift. Alina invited him in for lemonade. He almost said no. Then he thought of the cookies, the note, the gate, and the window. So he followed her up the narrow path. Inside, the house smelled of lemon polish, old books, and bread. The hallway was lined with framed photographs, but not too many. A young Alina standing beside a bicycle, a man in a dark coat holding a fishing rod, a group of children on a beach, a small black dog with one white paw. "Was that your dog?" Noah asked, pointing to the photograph. "Margaret," Alina said. She believed herself to be in charge of the entire street. "Was she?" "Mostly." Noah smiled. They sat in the kitchen. Alina poured lemonade into 2 tall glasses. Her hands trembled slightly, but she did everything carefully, as if the small ritual mattered. For a while, they spoke about simple things. School, weather, May's questions, the broken gate. Then Noah, because he was 13 and had not yet learned how long adults can hide behind polite conversation, asked, "Why does your upstairs window face the moon?" The room became very still. Alina did not seem angry. But the air changed, the way it changes when a door opens into a room you did not know existed. Noah immediately regretted it. "Sorry," he said, "I shouldn't have asked." Alina placed her glass on the table. "It is a fair question. You don't have to answer." "No," she said, "I don't." Then she looked toward the kitchen window, where afternoon light rested on a row of small potted herbs. "But I think I might." Noah waited. Alina folded her hands. "When Thomas and I bought this house, that upstairs room was empty. The roof leaked. The wallpaper was terrible. There was a family of mice living inside the wall, though Thomas insisted they were guests." Noah laughed quietly. "We planned to turn it into a sewing room," Alina continued. "But the first night we slept here, I woke around midnight and found Thomas standing in that room, looking out the window." Her voice softened. The moon was full. It rose over the hills and filled the room with light. He said, "Ellie, look. The house came with its own moon." Alina looked down at her hands. "After that it became our room. We read there, talked there, drank tea there. When he could not sleep, he watched the moon. When I worried too much, he made me sit by the window until my thoughts became quieter." Noah said nothing. He used to say the moon was a patient listener. "Was he sick?" Noah asked gently. Alina nodded. "Eventually, for a long time. Near the end, he could no longer go downstairs easily, so we moved the blue chair into that room. Every night, if the weather was clear, I would open the curtains for him. He would watch the moon and tell me it looked the same as it had when we were young." Her eyes shone, but her voice remained steady. "The last thing he asked me was to keep the window open for him, not physically. He knew that was impossible. He meant, keep looking, keep noticing, keep letting light come in." Noah stared at the table. He thought of his father leaving. He thought of promises to call. He thought of the way absence could fill a room, even when no one had died. "So you sit there for him," he said. Alina looked at him. "At first, yes. And now?" She took a slow breath. "Now I think I sit there for myself." The answer stayed with Noah. That evening, when he returned home, May was building a castle out of cereal boxes, and Claire was heating soup on the stove. "How was Mrs. Vale?" his mother asked. "She has a window for the moon," May announced, though she had not been there. Noah looked at his sister. "Yes," he said, "she does." Later that night, Noah sat at his own window. For the first time, he did not simply look at Alina's house. He looked at the moon. It was not full yet. Only a silver curve. But it was there. Patient. Listening. In November, the cold came early. The trees emptied themselves. The gardens turned brown. Smoke rose from chimneys in the late afternoon. People walked quickly, collars lifted, hands in pockets. Alina began moving more slowly. No one noticed it first when she crossed the street one morning with a paper bag of cookies. Halfway across, she stopped and pressed one hand lightly to her side. "Mrs. Vale," Noah called. She smiled at once, as people often do when they do not want others to worry. "Just catching my breath." But after that, Noah watched more carefully. She still went to the bakery on Tuesdays. Still opened her curtains at night. Still left cookies when May drew a picture. But the walk from her gate to the sidewalk took longer. Her hands trembled more. The light in the moon-facing room sometimes came on earlier. One Sunday evening, Claire knocked on Alina's door and brought a pot of vegetable stew. "We made too much," she said, which everyone knew was the kind lie people use when they want to care without making the other person feel weak. Alina accepted it with grace. "Then I shall prevent waste." Noah carried the pot to the kitchen. As they were leaving, Alina touched his sleeve. "Noah, would you do something for me?" "Sure." She pointed toward the stairs. "There is a box on the desk upstairs, a wooden one. Would you bring it down?" Claire glanced at her son, then at Alina. "We can stay if you need help." "Not tonight," Alina said gently, "just the box." Noah climbed the stairs. The hallway above was narrow and quiet. At the end, the moon-facing room stood open. He paused at the doorway. It was different from seeing it across the street. Up close, the room felt alive with years. Books on the shelf. A knitted blanket over the blue chair. The small lamp. The photograph of Thomas. And the window. Beyond the glass, the moon had just risen over the hills, pale and blurred by thin clouds. On the desk sat the wooden box. Noah picked it up carefully. It was heavier than it looked. When he brought it downstairs, Alina placed both hands on the lid but did not open it. "Thank you," she said. Noah nodded. He wanted to ask what was inside. He did not. Privacy. Kindness. Both. 2 nights later. A storm came through Bellwether. Not a violent storm. A restless one. Rain tapped against windows. Wind moved through the trees. The moon was hidden behind clouds and the streets shone black under the lamps. Noah was finishing math homework when he heard a knock at the front door. His mother opened it. Alina stood on the porch, soaked at the shoulders, holding the wooden box against her chest. "Alina," Claire said, startled, "come in." Alina stepped inside. She seemed embarrassed. "I am sorry to trouble you." "You're not troubling us." May appeared in the hallway, eyes wide. "Is it the moon window lady?" Noah gave her a look. Alina smiled faintly. "Tonight, I am more of a rain window lady." Claire helped her remove her wet coat. They settled her by the fire. Noah brought a towel. May brought her stuffed rabbit, then changed her mind and kept it. Alina looked at the wooden box in her lap. "I should not have come so late." "You can come whenever you need," Claire said. Alina was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Noah. "I found something." She opened the box. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Some tied with blue ribbon. Some folded in envelopes yellowed with age. Some postcards. A few photographs. And one small notebook with a worn leather cover. "Thomas wrote these," Alina said. "Some when he traveled for work, some when he was in hospital, some he never gave me until near the end." Claire sat gently across from her. "Why bring them here tonight?" Alina touched the notebook. "Because I was afraid." No one spoke. The rain filled the silence. "Afraid of what?" Noah asked softly. Alina looked embarrassed by the answer. Forgetting his voice. Claire's face changed. She understood, not in the same way perhaps, but enough. Eleanor continued, when someone is gone for many years, people think grief becomes smaller. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it becomes more delicate, easier to disturb. I woke tonight and could not remember exactly how Thomas said my name. I knew it, of course, but I could not hear it clearly. Her fingers trembled on the notebook. So I opened the box, then I read one letter, then another, and suddenly the house felt too large. May climbed onto the couch beside her. "You can read here," she said. Eleanor looked at the child. "Can I?" May nodded solemnly. "Our house isn't too large, it's messy." For the first time that evening, Eleanor laughed. Claire made tea. The storm moved around the house. And by the fire, Eleanor read one of Thomas's letters aloud. Not all of it. Just a small part. "My dear Ellie," she read, her voice trembling at first, then steadying. "The moon is nearly full tonight, and I am convinced it followed me from home so I would not feel too far away from you. I know you will say that is impossible, but you are wrong about many romantic things, and I love you anyway." May giggled. Noah smiled despite himself. Eleanor closed her eyes. "There," she whispered. "What?" Claire asked. "I heard him." After that night something changed. Not suddenly, not loudly, but Eleanor began coming over once a week, usually on Friday evenings. She brought cookies. Claire made tea. May drew moons, stars, cats, and one confusing picture, she said, was a dragon wearing pajamas. Noah fixed little things around Eleanor's house, a loose shelf, a squeaking hinge, the gate latch again. Sometimes Eleanor read a letter from the wooden box. Sometimes she told stories. About Thomas dancing badly in the kitchen. About the summer their roof leaked into 5 buckets, and they slept downstairs laughing every time a drop landed. About the night they first saw the moon rise from the upstairs window. Noah listened. He did not always understand why the stories mattered so much. But he knew they did. Then one Friday, Eleanor did not come. At first they thought she was tired. Claire sent Noah across the lane with soup. He knocked. No answer. The porch light was on. The curtains downstairs were closed. He knocked again. "Mrs. Vale." Nothing. He felt the same cold feeling he sometimes felt when the phone rang late at night. He ran back. Claire called emergency services. The ambulance came without sirens, which somehow made it feel more serious. Eleanor had fallen near the stairs. She was alive but weak. As the paramedics carried her out, her eyes opened briefly. She looked at Noah. "The window," she whispered. Noah stepped closer. "What?" "Moon tonight." Then they took her away. The house across Briar Lane went dark. For the first time since Noah could remember, the moon-facing window did not glow. That night Noah could not sleep. He stood at his own window, staring at the dark square across the lane. The moon rose over the hills, clear and bright. But the window did not answer. May came into his room quietly, carrying her stuffed rabbit. "Is Mrs. Vale going to die?" she asked. Noah swallowed. "I don't know." May looked across the street. "Her window is sleeping." Noah put an arm around his sister. For a while they watched the moon together. Then May said, "Maybe we should turn on a light for her." "Where?" "In our window, so the moon knows where to look." It was the kind of idea only a child could have. Simple. Impossible. Exactly right. Noah found a small lamp from the hallway and placed it on his windowsill. He turned it on. A warm yellow glow filled the glass. Across the lane, Eleanor's window remained dark. But Noah felt better. The next day, Claire visited Alina in the hospital. She returned with tired eyes and a soft smile. "She's stable," she said. Stable. A word people hold on to when they are not yet allowed to hold on to hope. For 3 weeks, Alina remained in the hospital, then a rehabilitation center. During that time, Noah and May kept the lamp in the window every night. At first, it was just for Alina. Then Mrs. Vale's neighbor, Mr. Cole, noticed and placed a candle lamp in his own window. Then Mrs. Harper down the street did the same. Then the bakery put a small moon-shaped light in the front display. By the end of the second week, nearly every house on Briar Lane had a small light in one window after sunset. No one organized it. No one named it. It just happened. A street of little lights facing the night. When Alina was finally well enough for visitors, Noah and May went with Claire. Alina looked smaller in the hospital bed, but her eyes were clear. May climbed onto the chair beside her. "We made the moon a map," she announced. Alina blinked. "A map?" Noah explained about the lamps. "The windows. The street. The bakery." Alina listened without speaking. Then tears slipped down her cheeks. May looked worried. "Was that bad?" Alina reached for her hand. "No, dear, that was very good." Noah looked down. "We didn't want your window to be alone." Alina closed her eyes. "It never was," she whispered. "I just forgot." Alina came home in early December. There was no snow yet, but the air had the clean, cold feeling of winter waiting nearby. Claire drove her back from the rehabilitation center, while Noah and May stood on Alina's porch with a plate of cookies they had bought from the bakery. "We should have baked them," May said. "You put salt instead of sugar last time," Noah replied. "It was experimental." "It was terrible." May considered this and nodded. "Artistically terrible." When the car pulled into the drive, Alina looked up at the house as if she were seeing it from far away. Noah noticed her eyes move at once to the upstairs window. The curtains were closed. The room was dark. For a moment, Alina did not get out. Claire opened the door gently. "Take your time." Alina nodded. "I wondered," she said, almost to herself, "if I would be afraid of it." "Of the house?" Noah asked. "Of going back to the room." Noah understood. The room had held memory. Then it had held fear. Sometimes places change because of what happens inside them. But sometimes people can change them back. They helped Alina inside. The house was warm. Claire had turned on the heat earlier. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon because May had insisted a house should smell happy when someone came home. For the first few days, Alina stayed downstairs. She slept in the small sitting room. She took short walks to the gate. She drank tea with Claire. She let May arrange cookies on a plate in patterns that only made sense to May. But each evening, as the sky darkened, Alina looked toward the staircase. No one mentioned it. On the fourth night, the moon was full. It rose early, large and pale gold above the hills. Noah saw it from his bedroom window and knew. A few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Alina stood on the porch in her coat, leaning on a cane. "Noah," she said, "would you help me upstairs?" He looked at his mother. Claire nodded. Together they crossed the lane. May followed with a blanket, even though no one had asked her to bring one. Inside Alina's house, the staircase seemed steeper than before. Alina climbed slowly, one step at a time, one hand on the railing, the other lightly on Noah's arm. Halfway up, she stopped to breathe. "No hurry," Noah said. She smiled. That is something young people say when they do not know how much hurry old bones can feel. "Sorry." No, it was kind. When they reached the top, the door to the moon-facing room stood closed. Elena rested her hand on the knob. For a long moment, she did not turn it. May whispered, "Maybe the room missed you." Elena looked back at her. "Do you think rooms can miss people?" May nodded. "Beds do, chairs do, why not rooms?" Elena opened the door. The room was dark, except for moonlight pressing against the curtains. Noah stepped forward and turned on the small lamp. Warm light spread across the desk, the books, the blue chair, the silver watch, and Thomas's photograph. Everything was exactly as it had been. And not exactly. Elena stood in the doorway. Her eyes filled. "Hello, Thomas," she whispered. Then she laughed softly, embarrassed by her own tears. "And hello, room." May looked very pleased. Noah helped her to the blue chair. Claire opened the curtains. The full moon appeared beyond the window, round and calm above the winter hills. For a few moments, no one spoke. The moonlight entered the room the way it always had. Silver, patient, gentle on old wood and worn fabric. Elena sat back in the chair and closed her eyes. Noah thought she might be praying, or remembering, or simply resting. After a while, she opened her eyes and looked at the children. "Would you like to know a secret?" May nodded immediately. Noah nodded more slowly. Elena pointed to the window. "This window does not belong only to me." May frowned. "Who else owns it?" "Anyone who needs it." Noah looked at her. Elena continued, "For many years I thought keeping the window meant keeping Thomas close, and perhaps it did, but I think I misunderstood him a little. He did not ask me to sit here forever and watch life from behind glass. He asked me to keep letting light in." She looked at Noah. "That is harder than remembering." Noah knew she was right. Remembering could hurt. But letting light in meant admitting that life was still happening. That you were still part of it. That there might be warmth after a long cold season. Elena reached into the pocket of her sweater and pulled out a small key. "Noah, there is something in the desk drawer. Would you open it?" He took the key and unlocked the center drawer. Inside was the leather notebook from the wooden box. He handed it to her. Elena opened to a page marked with a blue ribbon. "Thomas wrote this near the end," she said. "I did not understand it then. I think I am beginning to understand it now." She read aloud. "My dearest Ellie, if there comes a night when the moon rises and I am not there to see it with you, do not turn away from the window. But do not stay there only for me. Watch it for yourself. Watch it for the child walking home late who needs a light in the glass. Watch it for the neighbor who thinks no one notices. Watch it for the future visitor you have not met yet. A window is not only a place to look out. It is also a way to tell the world softly, I am still here." The room was silent. Noah felt the words settle somewhere inside him. A way to tell the world softly, I am still here. He thought of his father. He thought of the years he had spent pretending not to care. He thought of his mother coming home tired, May asking impossible questions, Elena's cookies, the lamps on Briar Lane. Maybe being strong did not mean acting like absence meant nothing. Maybe it meant leaving one small light on anyway. After that night, Elena changed her routine. She still sat by the moon-facing window. But not every night alone. On Fridays, Noah, May, and Claire came over for tea. Sometimes they read Thomas's letters. Sometimes Noah did homework at the desk, while May drew moons with faces. Sometimes Claire sat in the blue chair, closed her eyes, and said nothing for 10 full minutes, which Elena called excellent medicine. Sometimes neighbors came. Not many. Never too loudly. Mrs. Harper brought knitting. Mr. Cole brought old stories about Briar Lane. The baker brought cookies, then pretended not to be emotional when Elena said they were nearly as good as hers. The room with the window became something different. Not a shrine. Not a place trapped in the past. A quiet room. A listening room. A room where grief was allowed to sit down without needing to explain itself. A room where people could look at the moon and remember that the world was wide, patient, and still beautiful. By Christmas, the little lamps in the windows of Briar Lane had become a habit. Every evening, one by one, they appeared. A lamp in the Finch house. A candle in Mrs. Harper's window. A moon-shaped light in the bakery. A golden lantern in Mr. Cole's front room. And upstairs in Aline's house, the window that faced the moon. People passing through town began to notice. "Why does this street have lights in every window?" a traveler asked at the bakery. The baker thought for a moment. "Because sometimes people need help finding their way home," he said. That answer spread. And because small towns are good at turning kindness into tradition, Briar Lane began holding a winter moon night every December. Not a festival. Nothing noisy. Just an evening when people lit their windows, shared soup, walked slowly and looked up. Aline always sat by her window for a little while. Then with help she came downstairs and joined everyone outside. The first year, Noah stood beside her under a clear December sky. The moon was nearly full. People moved quietly along the lane, holding cups of tea, speaking softly, pointing out stars. May was explaining to anyone who would listen that the moon followed kind people more carefully than others. "Is that true?" Noah asked Aline. She looked at the moon. "It sounds like something Thomas would have agreed with." Noah smiled. "Do you miss him every time you look?" Aline considered this. "Yes," she said, "but not only with sadness anymore. Sometimes missing someone becomes a way of thanking them for having been here." Noah looked down. "I think I miss my dad," he admitted. It was the first time he had said it plainly. Aline did not look surprised. "Of course you do. But I'm angry too." "Of course you are. Can both be true." Aline reached for his hand. Most honest things are made of more than one feeling. Noah nodded. Across the lane, his mother stood talking with Mrs. Harper, laughing at something. May ran in circles with another child, her scarf trailing behind her. The windows glowed. The moon watched. For the first time in a long while, Noah felt no need to pretend he was fine. He was not fine in the simple way people ask about. But he was here. And that was enough for tonight. Years passed. Noah grew taller. May grew less small but no less curious. Claire changed jobs and began coming home before dinner more often. Aline grew older. Her walks became shorter. Her hands became thinner. But every clear night, the moon-facing window still glowed. Sometimes Aline sat there. Sometimes Noah sat there when he visited from school. Sometimes May sat there with a notebook, writing stories about moons who delivered cookies. The room continued to hold people gently. Then one spring morning, when the lilacs had just begun to bloom along the fences, Aline did not wake. She was 91. She had gone peacefully, Claire said. In her own bed. With the curtains open. The moon had been visible until dawn. Bellwether mourned her in the way small towns mourn people who had quietly become part of their bones. The bakery closed for the morning. The church bell rang softly. Neighbors placed flowers at the green door. May left a drawing of a moon crying one silver tear. Noah stood on the porch for a long time, unable to move. He was 17 now, nearly grown, but grief made him feel 13 again. Claire stood beside him. "She left something for you," she said. Inside the house, on the desk in the moon-facing room, was an envelope. Noah opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a note written in Aline's careful script. "Dear Noah, If you are reading this, then I have gone ahead to wherever old women go when they have finished baking enough cookies for one lifetime. Do not be too sad, or rather be sad, but do not let sadness convince you that love has ended. Love is better at traveling than we are. The window is yours now if you want it, not the house exactly. That is for practical people to discuss. I mean the keeping of it, the remembering of what it means. Leave a light on when you can. Look up when the world feels heavy. Let people know softly that you are still here. And when the moon is bright, think of all the lonely windows in all the towns. And remember that even a small light can help someone across the dark. With affection, Eleanor. Noah read it twice. Then he folded it carefully and placed it beside Thomas's notebook. That evening, Briar Lane was silent. At dusk, Noah crossed to Eleanor's house with May and Claire. They climbed the stairs together. The room smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. The blue chair waited by the window. Noah turned on the lamp. Then May opened the curtains. The moon rose over the hills. For a moment, Noah could almost see Eleanor there. Not as a ghost, not as something frightening, but as a memory shaped like warmth. A gray sweater, a soft smile, a basket of cookies. A woman who had taught a lonely boy that windows could be more than glass. Across Briar Lane, one light appeared. Then another. Then another. Soon the whole street was glowing. No one had planned it. No one needed to. People remembered. Noah stood at the window and looked out at the lights. Then he looked up at the moon. "Good night, Mrs. Vale," May whispered. Noah added quietly, "Thank you." The moon gave no answer. It did not need to. Some things answer by simply remaining. And so the window that faced the moon continued. Through summers of warm rain. Through autumns of gold leaves. Through winters when snow softened every roof. Through springs when the lilacs bloomed again. People came and went. Children grew. Houses changed hands. The bakery got a new sign. The green gate was repaired at last. But every December, Briar Lane lit its windows. And every clear night, someone, somewhere on that street looked up. Not always because they were sad. Sometimes because they were grateful. Sometimes because they needed peace. Sometimes because they wanted to remember someone. Sometimes because the moon was beautiful, and beauty is reason enough. Years later, when Noah was older and living far from Bellwether, he would still sometimes wake in the night and look for the moon from whatever window was nearest. A city apartment window. A train window. A hotel window during a storm. And whenever he saw it, he remembered Eleanor's voice. A window is not only a place to look out. It is also a way to tell the world, softly, I am still here. So tonight, if you are listening in a quiet room, if the world feels too heavy, if there is a memory sitting beside you, if someone you love is far away, or gone, or changed beyond reach, imagine that old house on Briar Lane. Imagine the green door, the narrow staircase, the blue chair, the desk with the silver watch, the letters tied with ribbon, the window facing the hills. Imagine the moon rising slowly, calmly, without hurry. Imagine one small light appearing in the glass. Then another. Then another. A whole street of quiet lights. Each one saying the same gentle thing. I am here. I remember. You are not alone in the dark. And perhaps, as your own room grows softer and the night settles around you, you can let your thoughts become quiet too. You do not have to solve everything before morning. You do not have to carry every sadness all at once. You do not have to be perfectly healed to let light in. Rest now. Let the window be open in your mind. Let the moon be patient. Let the night hold what you cannot. And somewhere beyond the hills of a small sleeping town, let one gentle light keep glowing. The end.